I just got back from Oaxaca, Mexico on a photo trip, and it really challenged the way I think about working alone. When I started photo and video around 13, it was an interest and a hobby that I didn't share with a lot of people around me. So it caused me to learn and grow on my own, and I absolutely loved that. To be blunt, if I sucked at it, it was my fault, and if I liked the work, it was a reflection of the time and effort that I put into it. Through these last 7 years, that hasn't really changed at all. I still love having my hands on all aspects of a project and getting to complete something on my own. Sometimes, though, it can lead to burnout, exhaustion, and a little bit of loneliness. I'm definitely very familiar with those feelings through these past few years, and it's something that I know that with a little bit of time and space will go away. The problem is that when it is my financial means of supporting my life, that's how I pay rent, is through photography and video, I can't give myself the space I need to work through the burnout, because it's a necessity. I have to get it done. So that can be a good and a bad thing because it causes me to work through that resistance, but sometimes it doesn't give me the space I need. And that's been a bit of a pattern that I've seen myself go through the last few years, is inspiration, working really hard, and then burning out and having to push myself through the burnout. And that process of doing it alone can lead me to feeling down, depressed, wondering why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I think it's something that we've all been in that place. And then I went on this photo trip, and my thoughts about how I was handling that burnout completely changed. Going into this trip, I was feeling very overwhelmed. I just had a lot of projects that were stacking up, and I had a ton of editing I needed to do. So even when I got there, I was feeling not mentally present. My mind was still on what needed to be done, and I couldn't necessarily enjoy where I was or what I was doing. The people around me seemed to be in a completely different place. They were all freaking out about the colors of the city, the way the sunset looks, the architecture, all this amazing stuff that took me a few days to warm up to just because I couldn't mentally be present. Truthfully, it felt like I was surrounded by a ton of little kids who had an obsession and just would not stop talking about it, but in the best way. The way they acted about something that they were passionate about was completely contagious. I picked up on it really quickly, and it kind of pulled me to be more present in the moment. And I think that gave me a sense of belonging because I felt like I was in a group that understood something that I was obsessed with. I was able to talk about camera gear or light and colors and like shape and all this cool stuff that I feel like I'm usually being annoying about, and they enjoyed it just as much as I do, if not more. So I felt seen, and it was cool to find that in a group because that wasn't a feeling that I was very used to. Even if you didn't enjoy photography, there were people on this trip that were admiring the photographers because of how happy they looked taking the photos. Just witnessing people do what they love was completely contagious and reminded me of why I love doing what I do. For me, it all came together the night of the luchador wrestling, which if you haven't been to luchador wrestling and you're ever in Mexico, you have to go. It is absolutely insane. But during the wrestling, the photographers were running around like crazy. We were all sitting front row around this wrestling ring, and as the performers were wrestling, they were just running around with their flashes and cameras and getting the crowd's reaction shots and the wrestlers doing flips off of the beams. And watching them again do what they love made me excited for them. Some of the people on the trip weren't photographers, and they even talked about how much they loved watching the photographers chase the wrestlers around just because it was cool to watch. And the photos from the other photographers turned out absolutely amazing. But even if they didn't, just the joy that that moment brought people, I think people would still look back on that memory with a smile and a fondness, even if none of the pictures turned out. There's this one specific photo that John took of the wrestlers jumping out of the ring, which is absolutely beautiful. And the photo's great, it captures the action perfectly. But my favorite part of the photo is in the background, you see Joe taking a photo of the same exact situation. And Joe literally looks like a kid in a candy store. He has his flash up in one hand and this like big smile on his face. And you can tell that he just loves what he's doing. He's in the moment and he knows that he couldn't be happier. And that shot alone is like, wow, that's what got me started in photography. That's the feeling I had when I started this. And that wrestling moment kind of wrapped it all together in a nice bow for me of what I had been experiencing that whole trip, which was essentially a healing of my burnouts. Whereas usually I would be alone and push through the burnout with resistance and just continuing to work because I needed the money from the jobs. This was me realizing that community can also heal that burnout. Getting to witness other people be passionate about things reminded me why I'm passionate about my hobby. And even though it's a simple realization, I experienced it for myself, and sometimes that's the way I have to learn things.